Arizona Territory, 1879. The sun beat down on the red dust streets of Clifton like it was trying to burn the town off the map. Danica Dorsey kept her back straight, clutching her little brother tighter as the auctioneer barked out numbers over the murmuring crowd. Her dress was threadbare, sleeves torn at the shoulder, and her boots pinched her toes. But none of that mattered. Not now. Not with 9-year-old Amos pressed into her side like he was trying to disappear. Next up, the auctioneer hollered, waving a hand. One young woman, age 19, strong back, knows housework. Comes with a boy 9. Full-blood siblings. No separate bids. The crowd shifted. Men with dust on their coats and money in their pockets eyed her like she was a mule at market. Danica didn't flinch. She wouldn't let them see fear. $5, someone called. 7. Another voice, rough and greedy. Amos gripped her hand tighter. She could feel the tremble in his fingers. 10. The voice came from the back. Calm. Deep. The kind of voice that stopped things. Heads turned. A tall man stepped out of the shadow of the old livery. His coat was worn but clean, a wide hat pulled low over his eyes. Dust coated his boots like he had been riding for days. His jaw was set, firm, and he looked straight at her. $10 from the cowboy, the auctioneer said, trying to sound pleased but clearly hoping for more. Do I hear 11? Silence. Sold. Danica barely heard the rest. Her heart thundered in her ears. She pulled Amos close, bracing for what came next. The cowboy handed over the coins and stepped up to them. He crouched by Amos first, looking him in the eye. You all right, son? Amos blinked, unsure. Danica answered for him. He's fine. The man stood, and now he looked at her. Really looked. Not like the others had measuring her, but like he was looking for something honest in her face. You got a name? He asked. Danica. Danica Dorsey. This is Amos, she said, voice steady. He nodded once. I am Merritt Jameson. You two will ride with me. You will not be servants. You will not be owned. You will both call me family. Danica stared at him. Why? She asked quiet. He looked down a moment, like he had 1,000 things he could say, but only one he wanted to. Because someone should have done the same for mine. He turned then, walked toward a waiting chestnut horse hitched beside a wagon. Danica hesitated, then took Amos's hand and followed. They rode in silence for the first hour. The wagon creaked, the wheels rolling over rocks and dry brush. Merritt sat beside her, reins in hand, eyes on the road. Amos slept across her lap, his face smudged with dust. You hungry? Merritt asked. Danica glanced at him. We ate yesterday. That is not an answer, he said, pulling a small sack from behind the seat. He handed her a wrapped piece of cornbread and a strip of jerky. Eat. She took it, fingers brushing his. His hands were rough, calloused. He did not speak again. They stopped at dusk near a low ridge, mesquite trees casting long shadows in the gold light. Merritt built a fire while Danica settled Amos on a bedroll. The boy didn't wake. You got people? Merritt asked, breaking the quiet. No, she said. Our mama died last winter. Pneumonia. Got bad real fast. I tried to keep us afloat, but the landlord sold the place out from under us. Sheriff picked us up last week. Told us we were vagrants. He nodded like he understood too well. I had 2 kids once, he said. Twins. Abigail and Matthew. Their mama died birthing them. I did what I could, but they both got fever when they were 3. Couldn't save them. Danica looked at him, her chest tight. I am sorry. He poked the fire with a stick, the flames catching in his eyes. I do not want pity. Just truth. You deserve to know who you are riding with. You are not what I expected, she said. He gave a short breath through his nose. I get that a lot. They shared food quietly. When the stars came out, Merritt spread his coat over Amos. You do not need to, she started. I know I do not need to, he said. But he's cold. Danica lay awake that night listening to the wind blow through the brush and the soft sound of Merritt's breathing from the other side of the fire. She did not know what kind of man took in strangers without asking for anything. But she knew she had seen the way he looked at Amos. And at her, like he saw something worth saving. The next few days passed in steady rhythm. Merritt was quiet, but never unkind. He showed Amos how to brush the horses, let him hold the reins. With Danica, he was patient. He never crowded her, but he never treated her like she was fragile either. They reached his homestead on the 4th morning. A small ranch tucked between 2 hills, with a barn, a corral, and a two-room house that looked worn but solid. Danica stood at the gate, her hand on Amos's shoulder. "This all yours?" she asked. "Built it myself," Merritt said. "You two are welcome here. For as long as you like." Inside, the house smelled of cedar and old books. There was a table with 3 chairs, a potbelly stove, a faded quilt on one bed, and another room with 2 cots already made up. "You planned for us," she said, surprised. "I hoped," he answered. That night, after Amos fell asleep curled in one of the cots, Danica stepped outside. Merritt was sitting on the porch, whittling. "I do not know how to thank you," she said. "You do not have to." She sat beside him. The silence between them was easy now. "I was scared up there on that auction block," she said. "But then I saw you. And for the first time in weeks, I did not feel alone." Merritt set his carving down. "You are not alone anymore." He looked at her then, steady and sure. She reached out, brushing a piece of wood shaving from his coat. And when their hands met, something settled between them. Not sudden, not rushed, just quiet understanding. Danica smiled, small and real. "Family, huh?" He nodded. "If you will have me. I think I already do." The wind shifted over the mesa, carrying the scent of creosote and distant rain as Merritt hoisted the last bale of hay into the loft. His shirt clung damp to his back, sweat mixing with dust, but he didn't stop. Not until Danica's voice reached up from below. "There's coffee ready," she said. He looked down. She stood near the barn door, one hand shading her eyes, the other holding a tin cup. Her dress was different than the one she'd arrived in, this one patched at the hem, but clean, borrowed from the bottom of a trunk he'd kept shut for years. It fit her like it belonged. Merritt climbed down slowly, brushing hay from his sleeves. "You didn't have to bring that out here. I wanted to." He took the cup, their fingers brushing again. This time, she didn't pull away. He nodded his thanks and sipped. It was strong, a little bitter, but hot and grounding. "I swept the front room," she said. "And Amos helped me hang the wash. He says he wants to learn how to ride on his own." Merritt leaned against the post. "He's got the hands for it. Light touch, but sure. He's never had a man show him how to do things right," she said, not looking at him. "I aim to change that." Danica glanced up at him then. "You don't talk much about what you want." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Most days, I figure it's better to know what I can give, not what I expect." She held his gaze. "And if someone wanted to know anyway?" He let the silence stretch, the only sound the rustle of cottonwood leaves beyond the corral. Then he said, "I want peace. I want to work land that's mine and have folks under my roof who sleep easy because they know they're safe." "That's it." Danica nodded once. "That sounds a lot like what I want, too." That evening, Amos ran through the door barefoot, cheeks flushed. "There's a coyote by the creek," he said. "I saw it from the fence." Merritt set down his fork. "You stay back from the water after dusk. They don't bother unless cornered, but it's still a wild thing." "I wasn't close," Amos said quickly. Danica gave him a gentle look. "Next time, call one of us." Merritt stood and reached for his rifle. "I'll take a look." "I'll come," Danica said, already pulling on her boots. They walked along the split-rail fence, the sky deepening to violet. The rifle rested easy in Merritt's arms, not raised, just ready. Danica walked a step behind him, her eyes sharp on the brush. "You ever shoot?" he asked. "Only once. I missed the rabbit, but scared it clean off." He chuckled softly. "Better than hitting something you don't mean to." They reached the creek bed, the water running low this late in summer. Tracks marked the soft earth, narrow pause in a wandering line. Merritt crouched to study them. "Looks like it passed through. Didn't linger." "Then Amos was telling the truth," she said. "He's got a good eye." They lingered a moment before starting back. The moon was rising, pale and full. Danica tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been thinking about winter. If we're to stay, I'd like to help with preserving. I've got jars in the root cellar. And smokehouse boards need mending. If you're set on staying, there's no shortage of work." She slowed her steps. "I am." He stopped, looking at her fully. "You sure?" Her voice was quiet. "Yes. I know we arrived with nothing, but I want to earn our place here. I want Amos to grow up where someone sees him." "You don't owe me anything, Danica." "I know," she said, "but I want to build something. With my own hands. Besides someone who doesn't flinch from the hard parts." He reached out then, slow and steady, and tucked her shawl tighter at her shoulders. His touch was warm. She didn't move away. I won't make promises I can't keep, he said. Then don't. Just stay steady like you are. Her voice caught, but she didn't look away. He nodded once. That I can do. Later, as the house settled into sleep, Danica lay awake long after Amos's breathing evened out across the room. She could hear the soft creak of floorboards where Merritt moved, checking the doors, banked the stove, made sure they were safe. She closed her eyes then, and for the first time since her mama's last breath, she let herself believe they might have found home. Not a place, a person, and that was enough to let her sleep. The days settled into the rhythm of late summer clear mornings, dry winds, and the long work that came before harvest. Merritt rose before dawn, often already in the field by the time Danica stepped outside, her apron tied snug and Amos still rubbing sleep from his eyes. One morning, as she poured water into the basin beside the kitchen door, she caught sight of Merritt walking back from the far paddock, saddle over his shoulder. His gait was slower than usual, uneven. When he reached the porch, she met him with a towel and a look. You favoring that leg for a reason? She asked. Stepped in a gopher hole last night checking the lower fence, he said, setting the saddle down with a grunt. Twisted it some. Nothing that won't ease. Sit, she said, nodding to the bench. Boot off. He hesitated, then lowered himself onto the bench. She knelt and worked the boot free. His sock was damp with sweat, the ankle already puffing above the bone. I'll soak it, she said. He watched her tie the towel at her waist and lift the basin to fetch fresh water. You always know just what to do. I watched my mama tend a mining camp full of broken men. You learn quick what swells and what festers. She glanced up. You should have said something last night. No sense fussing over something small, he said. She dipped a clean cloth into the cool water and pressed it gently to the ankle. A man alone might think that. A man with people counting on him should think again. He didn't argue. Inside, Amos was laying out dried apple slices on the table, humming under his breath. When he saw Merritt's boot off, his eyes widened. Danica looked up. Go fetch that willow bark we boiled yesterday. It's in the back jar. Amos ran off, eager to help. Merritt leaned back, exhaling slow. You said you watched your mama treat injuries, he said. She a healer? Not by title, but she had hands that knew how to quiet pain. I learned more from her than I ever did from books. She'd be proud of you. Danica wrung out the cloth. I hope so. The swelling began to ease by afternoon. Merritt insisted on hobbling out by sundown to check the barn, but Danica followed. I could do this myself, he said, reaching for the latch. I know, but I'm here now. Inside, the air was warm with straw and the scent of animals. Chickens rustled in their roosts. Danica moved past him and began refilling the feed pails. He leaned against a beam. You ever think about what you'd be doing if life had gone differently? No, she said. I stopped wondering about that after we buried her. I just think about what comes next. He nodded. You're young to carry so much. I'm not younger than what life gave me, she said simply. Merritt watched her a long moment. You got plans for this place? Now that it's as much yours as mine. I want to plant more squash come spring. The back plot has good soil, but it's being wasted. And I saw those bee boxes you've got tucked near the trees. We could clean them out. Start fresh. He smiled, slow and genuine. You think like someone who means to stay. I do. The next day, Danica took Amos into the hills beyond the pasture while Merritt rested his leg. She showed the boy how to find wild sage and pointed out where the earth changed color near the dry wash signs of copper in the clay. You think we'll stay here forever? Amos asked, tugging at a sprig of rabbit brush. She knelt beside him. Do you want to? He looked thoughtful. I like it. I like him too. He doesn't talk much, but he listens when I do. Danica smiled. That's worth more than most things. When they returned, Merritt was on the porch, carving something with the tip of his penknife. He didn't look up until they reached the steps. Found anything good? He asked. Sage, some dried berries, and a boy full of questions, Danica said. That's so, Merritt said, glancing at Amos. Well, I've got something for you, if you're ready for it. He handed the boy a slingshot, the Y-shaped handle smooth and fitted with fresh leather. Amos took it reverently. You made this. Might need practice, but it'll hold. Danica's heart caught in her chest. Not for the gift itself, but for the way Merritt held out quiet pieces of himself without saying a word. That night, after Amos had fallen asleep with the slingshot still clutched in one hand, Danica stepped outside. The stars were clear, the moon high over the ridge. Merritt sat on the porch again, his leg propped up. "You should be resting," she said. "I've been still all day. Needed air." She sat beside him, folding her hands in her lap. He's never had a man make something just for him. He's a good boy, brave. They sat in easy quiet until she spoke again. "You said once you lost your twins, Abigail and Matthew." He looked ahead. "I did. If they'd lived. What would you have hoped for them?" He was quiet a long while before answering. "I'd have wanted them to know they were safe, that they didn't have to earn their place at the table, that they were already enough." She reached over, her fingers resting lightly over his. "Then maybe you get to give that now. To us." He turned toward her, eyes steady. "I want to." She didn't look away. "Then do." Wind moved through the grass, soft as breath. "You've been patient with me," he said. "I never expected to feel this again. Not like this." "I didn't expect it at all," she said. "But I know it's real." He took her hand fully then, no hesitation. She laced her fingers through his. "Danica," he said, voice low, "I want to build this life with you. Not just shelter you. Stand beside you." Her reply was quiet, but sure. "Then let's build it." And they sat there, fingers entwined, as the night settled around them, not as strangers bound by circumstance, but as something new, something chosen. Where there had once been silence, there was now promise. And in that, they both finally rested. The first frost came early that year, brushing the morning grass with silver and turning the air sharp enough to bite bare skin. Merritt stood at the edge of the barn roof, hammer in hand, replacing a warped board before the snow made its way in. Below, Danica held the ladder steady, glancing up every so often with her brow furrowed. "You're leaning too far left," she said. "You fall from there, and I won't be the one hauling you back upright." Merritt shifted his weight back with a grunt. "You'd manage. I'd rather not need to." He finished the nail and climbed down, boots hitting the earth with a thud. His breath fogged the air. Danica studied the sky, clouds low and heavy against the hills. "We'll need to bring in the last of the squash today," she said. "And the onions. Before the ground hardens." "I'll hitch the team after breakfast," he said. "You want to take the east row? I already marked it yesterday. Just need the baskets." Merritt nodded and turned toward the house. Danica paused before following. "You still haven't said if you're going into Clifton next week." He stopped. "I've been weighing it. It's over 4 hours each way. If you're going, I need to know what to send. Coffee's low, and we're out of lamp wicks." "I'll go," he said. "You'll keep things steady here?" "I always do." Later, after they'd pulled the last of the root vegetables and stowed them in the cellar, Merritt sat at the table with a pencil and a creased scrap of paper. Danica poured hot water into the basin, drawing off her gloves. "You writing a list?" she asked. "Trying to," he said. "I don't like town much, but there's things we can't do without." She dried her hands. "There's a woman there, Mrs. Laree. She sells muslin and needles. Get 2 spools of black thread if she's got it." He added it without asking more. Danica took the seat across from him. "Do you know where you'll stay overnight?" He glanced up. "I'll sleep in the wagon. You'll freeze. I've done it before." She reached across the table, her hand resting lightly on his wrist. "You don't have to do everything the hard way." He looked at her hand, palm calloused from work, fingers still damp from the basin. "I never knew another way." "Well," she said, "now you do." He left 3 days later, bundled in his heavier coat, rifle slung beneath the seat, Amos waving from the fence with one mitten slipping from his hand. Danica watched until the wagon crested the rise and disappeared. The house felt quieter than usual. Not empty, just waiting. That night, Amos sat beside the hearth with his slate, copying letters Danica had drawn out for him earlier. She peeled apples by the firelight, the peels curling into a tin pail. "Do you think he'll bring back sweets?" Amos asked. "You're thinking of those lemon drops they keep in the barrel." He grinned. "He bought me 3 last time. He might bring 4 this time, if you've been helpful." "I've been helpful every day." Danica leaned to kiss the top of his head. "That's true." The next afternoon, she found herself standing in the doorway longer than necessary, eyes fixed on the ribbon of road in the distance, listening for the creak of the wagon frame. She shook it off and went back to mending the torn cuff of Merritt's shirt. When the wagon finally returned, the sun was low. She saw the shape of it first, then the curve of Merritt's shoulders beneath his coat. Her hands stilled over the needle. Amos shouted and ran out, scarf trailing behind him. Merritt pulled the team to a stop and handed down a paper bundle. Sure enough, the lemon drops were there. Danica stepped outside as Merritt climbed down. He looked tired, dust clinging to the lines at his throat, but his eyes met hers before anything else. "You get what you needed?" she asked. "And then some." He handed her a wrapped parcel much heavier than thread. She opened it inside to find a small iron skillet, the kind made for baking cornbread. "You said the old one cracked," he said. "Figured you'd want one that wouldn't." She ran her fingers along the rim, the weight solid in her hands. "I didn't expect this. I wanted to bring back something lasting." That night, after Amos had gone to sleep with lemon sugar still on his tongue, Danica and Merritt sat near the fire, sharing the last of the coffee. She turned the skillet in her lap. "I heard a thing once," she said, "that if you cook cornbread in a new pan, the first batch always tells you whether the home's good." He raised an eyebrow. "What's it say if it burns?" "That something ain't settled right." "And if it rises even?" She looked at him. "Then you're where you're supposed to be." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You think we are?" She didn't hesitate. "I do." He nodded slowly, then reached into his coat and pulled out a small, folded square of linen. "I stopped by the jeweler in town. Didn't plan to. But I saw this and it felt like something I ought to do." He placed the cloth in her hand. She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a band of silver, plain, with a single line etched around its center. "I know it ain't much," he said, "but it's honest." Danica looked from the ring to him. "You mean to ask me?" "I mean to have a life with you, not just share the chores. If you'll say yes." She didn't speak for a moment. Then she slipped the ring onto her finger, the metal still cool against her skin. "I already said yes the day you told me we'd call you family." He reached for her hand, the one now wearing the ring, and held it between his own. The fire crackled low beside them. Neither of them needed to speak the rest aloud. It was already written in the land beneath their feet, in the child sleeping safe in the next room, and in the warmth that came from knowing they would never again face the world alone. The snow held off longer than expected, but the wind had changed. It rolled down from the hills in sharp bursts, carrying the scent of pine and cold stone. Danica stood on the porch with a bundle of kindling in her arms, watching the last streaks of color fade from the western sky. Inside, Merritt was fitting a new latch to the back door. The old one had stuck since the last storm, and he'd set about fixing it with a quiet focus that had become familiar. Amos was in the loft, reading by lamplight, a quilt wrapped around his legs. Danica stepped in and kicked snow from her boots. "You've been out there long enough to turn your fingers blue," Merritt said without looking up. She set the kindling by the hearth. "It's not that bad yet. The creek hasn't frozen solid." He tightened the screw and straightened. "Still coming. Won't be long now." She took off her shawl and hung it by the stove. "I've been thinking of boiling the last of the dried peaches. Make a cobbler before they're too brittle. You don't need a reason to make something sweet." "I do," she said. "It's for tomorrow." He paused, then nodded slowly. "Been near a year, hasn't it? Tomorrow marks it." He didn't ask what else the day meant. He'd never needed to. She poured a cup of water and leaned against the counter. "I didn't think we'd still be here," she said. "Not at first. I thought maybe it was a kindness you'd offered, and we'd wear out our welcome by spring." Merritt crossed the room, reaching for a towel to wipe his hands. "Is that what you think now?" She turned to face him fully. "No, not anymore." He stepped closer, his body blocking the firelight for a moment. "I don't offer things I don't mean. You gave more than you took from the minute you stepped off that wagon." Danica looked down at her hands. "I've been wondering what comes next. This life it's steadier now. But I keep feeling like I'm waiting for something to shift." Merritt brushed his thumb along the curve of her hand. "Maybe it's time to stop waiting." She looked up at him. "I've got land enough for more," he said. "And I've been thinking about building on the north side of the barn. A proper room for Amos. He's getting taller by the day." She blinked. "You want to expand the house?" "I want to make it fit the life we're building. I want walls that you helped plan, a table we both sit at. Not just something I made before you came." Her voice softened. "You never talk about the years between losing them and finding us." He took a breath. "I wandered. Took jobs that didn't hold. I slept under the stars more nights than not. But nothing ever felt like mine again. Not until you called this place home. I never said the word. You didn't have to." She stepped into him then, her hands finding his collar. Do you still have that silver ring? He reached into his pocket without breaking her gaze and placed it in her palm. She held it between them. I want to wear it proper. Not just in the evenings when the day's chores are done. I want to wear it through planting and baking and brushing Amos's hair. Through all of it. He took the ring, his hand steady. Then let me put it on you, and we'll be done waiting. She held out her hand, and he slid it onto her finger until it settled against her skin like it had always belonged. They said no vows. None were needed. The quiet between them held more promise than any words. The next morning, while Amos fed the chickens, Merritt brought the extra boards out from the shed. Danica stood beside him, measuring with a length of twine and marking where the frame would rise. We'll need more nails, she said. I'll make a trip after the snow clears, he said. She looked up at the sky. Won't be long now. That night, the first flakes drifted down, catching in the dark. Danica lit the lantern, and Merritt bolted the door behind them. Amos curled up by the fire with the dog Merritt had brought home 2 weeks back, a scruffy thing that had needed coaxing to come near at first, but now barely left the boy's side. Danica stood behind Merritt, her arms circling his waist. You ever think we'd have this? He laid his hand over hers. No. But I think I'll spend the rest of my life holding on to it. She leaned her cheek against the back of his shoulder. Then we're agreed. They didn't speak again that night. They didn't need to. Years passed, but the seasons kept their rhythm. The house grew, as did the boy. The fields stretched wider, the root cellar deeper. And in everything, they moved as one through lean months and harvest, through sickness and songs by the fire, through the long, quiet days that made up a life worth living. Every evening, Danica wore the silver ring. Every morning, Merritt reached for her hand before his boots hit the floor. And every time Amos ran toward them with a question or a joke or a scraped knee, he ran toward 2 people who had chosen, again and again, to stay. And through it all, the home they built held steady. Not because it was perfect, but because it was true. And in the truth of it, they found the peace they'd both once thought lost. They loved each other until their hair silvered and the work slowed. And even then, they kept loving with the same quiet, steady strength that had begun on a dusty road and grown into something vast and lasting. Because they had chosen each other fully and forever, and the choosing had made all the difference.